All right, so we're going to cover map and we're going to cover join, and we're going to show how you can use these together to do some pretty cool stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new file and we're going to save it as index.html. I'm using VS Code, but you can use whatever you feel comfortable with. In VS Code, we have Emmet. So I'm going to go ahead and type an exclamation point and then tab, and it provides all that dummy text for us. I'm going to go ahead and click in the body and we're going to do a P element. So my idea is we're going to make an array of names and we're going to map it. Now, what does mapping mean? Mapping means essentially to make a copy of that array. Basic term right there. You're going to make a copy of this array. Obviously, we're going to make a change to it, so we want to keep our original array the way we want it with no changes. So that way, let's say we have a field, an array with 1,000 entries. We don't want to lose that data, right? So we'll make a copy, so that way, if we were to make that copy and make any changes or lose any data there, it would never affect our main array. So that's a very good common use case for that. To make the HTML elements that we're going to be messing with to make this happen. So we're going to go ahead and do click below for names, and then here we're going to go ahead and do a button. Now in this button, I want an on-click event to happen, and when an on-click event happens, I want it to call a function that we're going to create called myFunction, which is pretty simple, right, for what we're doing here. And I'm going to go ahead and press try this, and below that we'll place another P element and we'll say here are the names. Now inside of this, I want a span element, okay? And I want to put an ID here, and the ID is going to be called names. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to use get element by ID, and we're going to get this ID right here, and that is where we can place our mapped array of names. So we're done here. That's all we need in the HTML. So we'll go ahead and create a new file. And we're going to create this file and we're going to save it as an app.js. And we're going to come back here below the body tag and we're going to add our script source equals app.js. Save. Now, let's just see what this looks like here. If you have VS Code, you can add an extension called Live Server. It has a pink icon or purple icon. Go ahead and add that. And we're going to open with Live Server, and it opens this in a brand new window for us. So right now we have our P element of click below for names. We have our button that when we press it, it will call the function of myFunction. And here are the names. And in this space here is where we will have our get element by ID added. So we're going to come here now and let's go to our app.js. So the first thing that we need is our array of names. And we're going to do this as a const because this will not change, right? We don't want anything to ever change in this area here. So const names of people. Now also get in the habit of using variables that are very descriptive, because when you're in the beginning, you probably have 10, 12 variables that you're dealing with. So it's really easy to keep that in your mind. But when you get to bigger and bigger projects, you need to be very descriptive because it helps you realize what's going on where you are. All right, names of people. And we're going to add curly brackets here, and we're going to do first name. And the first name we'll go ahead with mine, Danny. Last name, and mind you, we're using camel case here, colon, Thompson. And we'll go outside of here and add a comma, and then we're going to go ahead and add like 4 names. So we'll copy this, 2, 3, 4. And then we can go ahead and add some of my favorite YouTubers. We'll do Brad Traversy. We will do Florin Pop. And we'll go ahead and do Kevin Powell. All right, so we have our 4 names. Now, if you remember, here, we're calling this function called myFunction. So let's go ahead and write the function of myFunction. So we got function, myFunction. And in here, we're going to write document.getElementById. And if you remember, coming back here, our ID was names. So we're going to type names dot inner HTML. So now we're going to do names of people, because that's what our array is, right? And we're going to map it. We're making our copy. And the details of that copy map, now we're entering our parameter, get full name. Now you're asking yourself, what is get full name? Well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to declare another function up here, and it's going to be get full name, and that's where we're going to take care of whatever we're doing with this mapped array. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do our next function, add a little space, and our next function is going to be get full name. Now we're going to be passing in our new mapped array one line at a time. And so what are we going to call that? And we can go ahead and copy that copied name. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to declare a variable called full name. And it's going to be copied name dot first name, comma, copied name dot last name. So we're saying every single item that comes in, we want the first name, we want the last name, all right, of that copied name, and we want to go ahead and we want to join them. Now, what is joining doing here? Well, we're joining each item together, and we're adding a space in between them, because what happens here is once you join them, the space disappears and it becomes one. So by adding that space, it adds a space in between that, and that basically makes it more readable, obviously. So, and then we'll come here and we'll just return full name. Simple as that. Let's go back to our little web browser that we have here, and if we click this, it's going to call my function. My function is going to now make a map of names of people, and it's going to call get full name. And when it calls get full name here, it's going to pass in the first name, last name. It's going to join them and add a space in between each one of these things and be returned. Let's see right here, and we've got it. So we have our space here. Now, just to show you this, we can go ahead and remove the space here, and when we try this now, the space is gone. We can go ahead and add an exclamation point if we want to and save that, and when we try that, we have an exclamation point. So hopefully that makes sense for you right there. Joining is the combination of each item that we pass through. Mapping is making a copy of that. But we have one problem that I'm noticing right now. When we do this, this is all jumbled together, and I'm not really liking that. It looks ugly. So we need to make a space here. Now what we could do is we could add a space to the beginning of each array, but if we did that, it would add a space to the first one as well, and that would not be ideal. We don't need a space between the first name. We don't need a space between each one like here, right? So what's a way that we could do this? I'm going to ask you to think for a second. What do you think would be the best way to approach this? It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. Just let your brain think for a second and just come up with something. Just think about it for a second. Take your time. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this return full name. And what we're going to need to do is we need to get the index place of each item of the array, and we're going to basically do an if statement. Now, a great way that we can do that is we're going to go up here and we're going to add an index. And what that's basically showing is the index of the array that we're mapping. So it's almost like when you're doing a for loop and you're making a variable like I equals 0, I plus plus, it's already keeping an idea of that index for you. So you don't really need to create a new variable to keep track of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do if index is equal to 0, we're going to just return the full name. Same thing that we were doing before, right? Return the full name. Else, return a space plus full name. And now if we do this, because we're checking the index spot, so it'll be index 0, index 1, index 2, it's going to keep track of that for us. So if we go ahead now and we go back to our browser, when we press this, we should see everything separated. Wham, bam, thank you, we're there. Perfect. Now, if we really wanted to take this to the next level, there's something else that we can do. And this may be slightly complicated, but we're gonna go over this together. Let's go ahead and just erase this entire function. Because now we know what that function is doing, right? And we will come here, and now let's just get rid of this function name. Now what can we do? We can, instead of creating a brand new function, we can do all of this using the power of array methods in one line. So we're gonna go ahead and write copied names. That's the name of our function that we wanted, right? And we're gonna use an arrow function here, and we're just gonna go ahead and put this bracket here, and we're gonna do copied names, the name of our function, dot first name, copied names, dot last name. And then outside of that bracket, we're gonna go ahead and do our join. So the same line that we had before, right? But now outside of the parentheses, because everything is encapsulated with that parentheses, right now it's the very same first line as our last function. But now we can add an extra join here, and we're gonna do a comma space. And what that's saying is, we've just created this element here. This element here is saying, I want the first name, last name, and I want them joined together with this space. Now I want to add that entire element, and I want to separate them, each one with a comma and a space. So if we save that, and we come back here, and we press that, we have the exact same result. So you can see how you can add and utilize multiple array methods together to accomplish something in a very efficient way. This is a great example of what you do in a job. I do this all the time. And just to go over everything again, what we're doing here is we've created our HTML elements. And right here, when we press our button, we want an on-click event calling my function. And when my function is called, we want to replace this span here, which is ID by names. And how are we going to do that? Well, my function is called, and we're going to get our element by ID names. We're using inner HTML, which is a way of replacing HTML text, and we're copying our array up here, names of people, and we're using that by doing a map. And by mapping it, we're creating our copy, and a single line, we're creating copied names. And if you think this is weird, we can go ahead and highlight this, and you can press Control-Shift-L or Command-Shift-L, and it will highlight all the instances. We can erase that and type, for example, person, and it will give us the exact same output. What matters the most is that you're actually using the same name here. So we have our function that we're doing inline. It's calling the first name and the last name, joining them together with a space, and we're joining each element that we're producing with a comma and a space. Now I hope this really helped you, because I had a lot of confusion with mapping in the beginning, but it's such a powerful tool that you'll utilize all the time. I could talk about this forever, but I want you to check out my other videos. So check out my other videos, and I will see you on the next one.